Hello everyone! In this episode I'll show you how to build some of the basic workshops you're going to need to provide your dwarves with their basic necessities, as well as how to construct some simple bedrooms and how to easily manage work orders for your dwarves. First of all, we're going to be digging out a few new rooms for our workshops. We're going to be digging out a room for our stoneworking industry and a room for our wood related industries. So then, I personally prefer doing that on this Z level, so the one right beneath the upper part of your fort, the storage area of your fort. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to craft some stairs. I'm going to craft downstairs by pressing D and then J, and then I'm going to be putting them here. Keep in mind, if you use this method, you can only select unmined walls to do this. Otherwise, you're going to have to do it manually through a build order rather than a designation. And then here, I'm going to build up downstairs because I want my dwarves to be able to go both up and down from this Z level. After all, it wouldn't be very helpful if they only had stairs to go down but none to go back up with. This will also open up this Z level for your dwarves. And then I'm going to create a small entrance here and then just dig out this whole area. Alright, I'll let my miner dig this out and I'll be right back with you guys the moment that my miners are done. Alright, now that this room has been mined out, I'm going to be constructing a carpenter's workshop. This allows us to turn logs into a variety of furniture and goods. Having at least one carpenter in your fort is highly recommended, because while furniture can be carved from a great deal of different materials, beds can only be carved out of wood, which means that having a carpenter is borderline essential for any fort. Wood also has the benefit of being the lightest material that most furniture can be constructed out of, which makes it ideal for the crafting of furniture very early on. Of course, wood is not common on every map. If you're on a map with very few trees, you might want to use stone instead. However, let's build our carpentry corner first. In addition to a carpentry workshop, I'm also going to be building a boiler and a wood furnace here. A boiler is optional as it only produces wooden and bone crossbows, and you can make crossbows out of metal as well. A wood furnace will allow you to turn your logs into charcoal for a metal industry later. So first I'm pressing B, followed by W, followed by C to make a carpenter's workshop, which I'm going to place right here to not obstruct dwarves trying to get into the room. Keep in mind that workshops can block dwarven movement, depending on which square you're looking at. So make sure there's always a little room to maneuver around your workshops. And creating it, I'm going to use mango wood logs. Next, I'm going to create the boyer's workshop for if I ever need it. I'm going to use cherry wood logs for that one. It doesn't really matter which type of logs you pick. And then for the last one, the wood furnace, I have to go into a different menu. So that menu you can reach by pressing B, followed by E. And then W for the wood furnace. And you can only make a wood furnace out of fire-safe material, so I'm going to have to make it out of dolomite. The only kind of stone I've mined so far. And next I'm going to create a wood stockpile by pressing P and W, and I'm going to use this entire room as my wood stockpile. This is optional, but it keeps the wood close to your workshops, so your dwarves will not have to walk very far to get to the wood. Next, I'm going to go into the workshop menu with P, and then I'm going to press X. And then I'm going to remove the stockpile that I had here, so that my dwarves will have to store the wood inside the fort, because I don't want my dwarves running back and forth between the two things. So you can already see that one of my dwarves is constructing the workshops, so we'll leave him to that. And in the meantime, we're going to dig out a room for a masonry workshop. You can call this our stone cutting corner. Feel free to adjust the sizes of these rooms to suit your own needs. In this next room, we're going to be building a masonry workshop, a craft dwarves workshop, and a mechanics workshop. This will allow us to craft a great deal of essentials out of stone. Since stone is an abundant and low value material, it's a great resource to exploit for the purpose of crafting a variety of furniture, goods, and for building workshops and walls. Just be warned, try not to craft things your dwarves will be hauling around, like pots or jugs, out of stone. Stone is a very heavy material and is best suited for static constructions. If you're on a map with a very deep soil layer, you may want to use wood instead of stone, as dwarves can get stuck hauling stone for very long periods of time if you have to dig too deeply for boulders. This has to do with how much boulders weigh and how much that slows down the rate at which dwarves move. So we're going to be building the mason's workshop. Again, the keys to get into this menu are B, W, followed by M in order to get to the mason's workshop. I'm going to be building this here using logs, of which I have a great supply now. Then I'm going to be building a craft dwarfs workshop, again with logs, followed by at last a mechanics workshop. In the meantime, I'm going to be ordering my dwarves to dig out some rooms on the lower levels. So I'm going to go down 1 Z level, and luckily we can already see which tiles are connected to my up-down stairs, 1 Z level up above us. And I'm going to be digging out more up-down stairs on the same squares. And then I'm going to go down another Z level and dig out more up-down stairs. Now on this Z level, I'm going to build a room for my manager. Managers don't need a lot of space, so I'm just building a small room about this size. And then on the Z level below this, I'm going to be building my dwarves' bedrooms. And to start out with, we only need 8 bedrooms. That gives us 1 bedroom to spare. In case we get migrants or something. And we'll give all our dwarves, all our current dwarves anyway, a place to sleep. I just realized I did this incorrectly. Hang on. In my personal opinion, this is the ideal size for bedrooms. This basically gives every dwarf or dwarven couple their own bedrooms. Some people will argue that especially early on it's better to use dormitories, where a lot of dwarves will be sleeping in the same room, which is because eventually, sooner or later, you're going to have to deal with certain blood-sucking menaces, and in that case it's better to use dormitories. But, especially if you're a new player, I highly recommend using these kinds of bedrooms, because these kinds of bedrooms are the easiest way to keep your dwarves happy. For those of you who are wondering, these bedrooms are exactly 2 squares wide and 3 squares tall. So while my miner is busy, I'm going to go to my carpenter's workshop by pressing Q. And then I'm going to press A while hovering above the carpenter's workshop. And I'm going to make 3 things. I'm going to make a wooden chair, a wooden door, and a wooden table. We're going to need this to furnish our manager's office. Now I'm going to let my dwarves do their thing, and then we'll get right back to the guide the moment that they're done. Now, in order to deal with the resources that we just dug out, we're going to have to move them out of the way so that we'll be able to complete our rooms later. And we're going to do that by creating a little activity zone right over here. So, in order to create this activity zone, press I, then move to this little square here. Doesn't really matter where you put it, I just like to put it right there where I can find it easily. And then I create the zone. And then while hovering over the zone, I press D to turn it into a garbage dump. Then I open the designations menu with D, followed by B, followed by D again. And then I'm going to designate this coal, and these gems for dumping. Remember that this is all optional. You don't have to go through the effort of mining out these resources out of the walls of your bedrooms. In fact, leaving them in can result in a great increase of the value of your bedrooms, which in turn makes your dwarves happier. But personally, I prefer digging out these resources. So now that these resources are out of the way, I'm going to be constructing some walls to replace them. So you go into B, uppercase C, and then W to create walls. First, make sure that you create walls in all the places that your dwarves cannot reach once the rest of the wall has been completed. So for instance, this little square here would get blocked if my dwarves would be unable to get into this square. So I'm going to construct a new wall there with the logs I still have. Not a very fireproof solution, but whatever. Then I'm going to fill up these squares, again with logs. And then I'm going to fill up these squares with logs. There's one square here I can already fill up. It's this one. And then I'll just leave my dwarves to construct it, and the moment that this is all done, I'll get right back to you guys. Now, since our furniture is done, we're going to be constructing a little office for our manager. So first we're going to put a door at the entrance to this room, followed by a chair slash throne, which is a seat, which you can select by pressing C, and then followed by a table, which you can select by pressing T. Note how I'm actually leaving enough space for dwarves to go into the room and reach the chair. If you block the chair with the table somehow, then dwarves won't be able to use the room effectively. So now my dwarves are going to haul the furniture to their location and construct it. There we go. Next, I'm going to press Q and select the chair. Now the chair immediately selects an area around itself as the designation for the room associated with that chair. So this is fine. This is exactly the room size I wanted to accept. And then I press enter to make it accept this size of the room. Now it is considered a room all in itself, a throne room to be exact, or an office depending on who you assign to that room. So now we're going to have to assign this room to our manager, but our manager hasn't been set yet, so we're going to do that first. We're going to press N in order to get into our nobles screen. Now there's a lot of different positions to assign here, but it's best to leave most of these alone for now. Because if you assign dwarves to positions, they become nobles. And nobles tend to get very uppity if they get promoted, but aren't spoiled rotten with lavishly decorated rooms and with you indulging in their every weird request. So for most of these positions, it's best to just leave them alone for now and focus on the positions of manager and bookkeeper. Managers will allow you to set jobs for your whole fort, including jobs that will produce a lot more goods than you can set at a workshop, or goods that have to be produced continuously, while bookkeepers allow you to view how much material is currently stored at your fort. Especially when it comes to the manager, there's a lot to tinker with to suit your personal need, but I'm going to try and stick to the basics for now. First, let's assign a dwarf to the manager position. It's up to you who should be the manager, though preferably it's a dwarf without much else to do, like the jeweler or the fish cleaner. So I'm selecting my jeweler for this job. This will automatically tell you if any of your dwarves have relevant skills in this area. None of them do, so it doesn't matter which one I pick. However, if you want to get picky about it, and you want to pick the absolute best dwarf for the job, pick the dwarf in your expedition with the highest organizer skill, and that has traits in straightforwardness and cooperation. I'm not that micromanage happy, so I'm going to go with my jeweler for this job. And while I'm at it, I'm also making him my bookkeeper. Now you can immediately see that he now requires things, which I'm going to give him in a minute. Remember that you can always assign someone else to the job later. It's just nice that for now you have a dwarf doing both of these jobs. If you pick a dwarf that for this job that may have more to do than just managing your fort, then you might be able to fix that by going to that dwarf, using the P and L command, and then turning off any jobs that dwarf has that will distract him from his duties as a manager. You can turn these back on later, but for now you want to get your job orders done as fast as possible, and that means you want your manager not to have any distractions. So now we're going to go back to our office with Q, and now we're going to hover over our chair and select A to assign it to someone. And we're going to assign it to our new manager. As you can see, his title has already changed from the Fortress Jeweler to the Fortress Manager. Now he's assigned to the office, and as soon as we give him a job to do, he's going to start using this office to assign job functions to the entire fort. So let's go over how that works. First press J, followed by M. As you can see, there are no active work orders yet, so let's assign a few of those, since we'll need a couple of things in bulk to finish our bedrooms. Press Q to start some new work orders, and then type in bed. This will only leave the option to construct a bed, which is exactly what we want. So we're going to construct 8 of these to place in our bedrooms. The same goes for doors. I'm going to be constructing them out of wood, but as you can see, there's a lot of different materials you can use to build doors. So again, I'm building 8 of these. I'm also building 8 wooden cabinets, which our dwarves will need to store some of their stuff. And 8 wooden chests, which again our dwarves will need to store their belongings. The moment our manager gets around to processing these job orders, our carpenter will automatically start producing the amount of goods specified here. You can even go further and assign conditions and priorities to these jobs, but for now this is fine. Now remember, anything that isn't a bed you can often construct out of different materials. In the early stages of the game, the easiest materials to access for this job are wood and stone, though I personally prefer wood because it's lighter and thus easier to haul. However, if you're looking for the economically superior choice, I would go with stone, since stone is a relatively low value material, and you'll end up with a lot more stone than you can reasonably use. While wood is a replenishable resource, you will need time to regrow the trees you cut down. In addition, cutting down too many trees may anger certain pointy-eared hippies. So I'm going to leave my dwarves to work on these job orders for a while, and I'll get back to you guys once they're done. Alright, a brief interruption while we wait. I just happened to notice that my horse has starved to death. Well, that does tend to happen if you don't put him in a pasture, which I forgot about at first, unfortunately. But let's do that for our remaining cattle before they also starve to death. So what you do is you create an activity zone, preferably on a place that actually has grass. I'm just selecting this area here, and then turning this into a pasture, as you can see here. Then you have to press press uppercase N, and then assign your remaining cattle to that zone. Now my remaining horse will not starve because he'll have a place to graze. Alright, my work orders are complete, so it's time to set up my dwarves' bedrooms. And this is the favorite setup I like to use for that. So I'm just placing my beds everywhere. Away from the entrance, because they do block dwarf movement. So now we have beds in each room, but this doesn't really complete a bedroom. With just a bed in it, dwarves tend to get unhappy as they'll fill up their whole room with clothing and other items that belong to them. So the next thing we're going to put in is a cabinet. Which you can select by going into B, the build menu, and then F. Next, we're going to be putting down some chests. Make sure you put down chests and not bags, because you do start off with bags, but you don't need those in your dwarves' rooms. Crap. If you do accidentally put down a bag, like I just did, hover over it with Q, and then press X. That removes it entirely and makes sure your dwarves aren't going to haul around bags to put in rooms. And then lastly, to isolate the rooms and make sure that the dwarves don't get disturbed from noise of dwarves walking back and forth between their rooms, we're going to put in some doors. And you can select those by pressing B and then D. So now the dwarves that have the hauling labor enabled are going to start moving beds and other pieces of furniture to their respective rooms. Now before we continue, I'm just going to show you how to... Oh no, hang on. So now I'm going to show you how to create bedrooms essentially, because right now they're basically free to use bedrooms for any dwarf that wants a place to sleep. Which is undesirable. You want your dwarves to have their own personal bedrooms, as that'll make them happy. So hover over the bed after you press Q, select R to turn it into a bedroom, and then just make sure you have the whole bedroom selected as you indicate the size of the room. And press enter and voila! Your first bedroom is done, and the first dwarf to get sleepy is going to come here and claim that bedroom for himself. This is a vast improvement than having them sleep on the cold floor, where they will receive unhappy thoughts from not having a bed, and will likely have their rest disturbed by passing dwarves. Now you have the basic setup for what your dwarves will need to build the rest of your fort, as well as providing for at least one of their basic necessities in the form of bedrooms. Eventually you'll have to build more bedrooms and workshops, but we'll continue on that in the rest of this series.